representative here from the ACLU, which was certainly a core group that we kind of bonded us, the organizers, together to come out here and work towards. So she just wanted to say some things regarding what she's
like
doing.
I said, we've locked you in, and it's 8:15, and I promise to be done by 10. No.
We want to hear what you have to say.
Here is a sign-in sheet. If you're interested, please do sign in. And there's materials over on this table, including the little envelopes, where if you wanted to send me a gift afterward, you're welcome to do that as well. Let me say how excited I am to be here tonight, not just because I'm with license plate number 1 in the House of Delegates. He's the most senior member of the House of Delegates right now, and that's only years of service at nothing at your age. And he has license plate number 1, and so we have known each other for longer than either of us wants to acknowledge in public. In my first session working, the Virginia General Assembly was 1986, and he started in 1978. So we have overlapped for a long time, but he's still been there longer than me.
Let me tell you.
Well, he's the only person in Richmond who's been there longer than me.
Let me tell you that when I've introduced bills to eliminate sexual discrimination in the law, when I introduced a bill the other day that says that if you're guilty of a hate crime, you lose your right to have a gun, there's always been someone there who's been willing to stand up and testify for me on these bills, even when it was impossible to do that, and that's been Clara. So I owe her a great set of gratitude.
A little over 4 years, I was privileged. 4 years ago, I was privileged to be asked to run the affiliate of the ACLU here in Virginia, and it's an amazing honor and a privilege, and it's been already the most rewarding experience of my career. I mean, there's no day I've loved more than the day we got to call the 2 couples who were our plaintiffs in the Virginia marriage equality case, and I got to tell Christy Berghoff. And she was okay with this. She said this public. I'm not telling you anything she hasn't said. I got to call Christy Berghoff and say, you know, Christy, today when you drive home from work, because she worked in the District of Columbia, but she lives out in Winchester. She's a federal employee. I said, when you drive home from work today, you will be a married woman with a child when you get home. Because at that point, as a DC married person, she was married at her desk, but she was a single mother when she got home. And I got to say, today, when you get in the car, when you get home, you're going to be a married woman with a child. And then I got to call my friends, Joanne and Jessica, who live in downstate near Stanton. And again, I can tell you this because it's not a secret. Joanne has epilepsy. And she and Jessica wanted to get married in part because their child was the biological child of Joanne, but not Jessie. And their concerns were twofold. One, that Jessie couldn't take care of Joanne if she had a seizure and was unconscious, and somebody might keep her from being able to be the spouse that she needed to be, and that their concern was that their son would somehow not have the protection of the 2 people who cared most about him. And so I was able to call them and say, today, this afternoon, after lunch, if you wanted to, you can go get a license. And you can get married, and you will have the official legal protections for your family that I have for my family and that many of you have for your families. And so I don't think there's any day I've loved more than that day, and I'm just looking for more days like that. And I guess the bad news is that I'm on the cusp of probably having many opportunities to do that. We at the ACLU in Virginia work very closely with our national, and there are 2 things that are true. We collaborate with them on a number of issues, like we're working very closely with lawyers and communication strategists from our national in representing Gavin Grimm. Gavin is a 17-year-old trans man, boy. You know, he's on that cusp, so you never know whether it's offensive to call him a boy. But Gavin is trying to just be able to pee at his high school. I mean, he's a senior in high school, and we started representing him as a junior. And people say to him all the time, well, why did you get involved in this? Are you trying to make some big statement? He said, no, I'm just really trying to go to the bathroom. And you know, Gavin, people don't think about this stuff, but you know, Gavin was at a football game this fall. And he's there with his friends, and in the middle of the football game, he decides, geez, I really have to go to the bathroom. But because the only bathroom that under school policy that they adopted is in the school building, and the school building's not open during the football game, Gavin had to get friends of his to drive him down to the gas station so he could go to the bathroom, because he wasn't able to go to the bathroom associated with his gender identity on school grounds. And so, Gavin's a phenomenal kid, and you should go look at the video of him at his first press conference, and you should follow him because he's amazing. But Gavin's gotten death threats. I had to call the FBI and have a meeting with the FBI and the sheriffs and his parents to talk about how we protect both him and the other kids in the school from people that are not kind and worse. And so, I'm hopeful. We are in the Supreme Court on that case about establishing that Title IX, which prohibits sex discrimination, extends its protections to all kids, including LGBT kids, who are discriminated against because of their gender identity. And we'll probably have oral arguments in March, and we may or may not have a ninth justice by then, and who knows. But we've won in the Fourth Circuit, and so the law of the land right now in this state is that every local school division is supposed to have a non-discriminatory policy that is inclusive of LGBTQ kids. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on. So where are we now? Well, this morning we filed a lawsuit to try to force out into the public documents associated with the conflicts of interest issues related to the current, new administration. We have sued the ACLU nationally is about 100 years old, and we've sued every president, including Barack Obama, who we weren't real fond of about drone strikes and a few other things. And he wasn't the best president we've ever had on privacy either, or about reining in government surveillance. But we figured we wouldn't wait longer than the first day of this new president's administration, and so we've already sued. But he made it really clear that if the current president was going to make good on some of the promises that he made during his campaign, that we would be there. Now, we need to sue early and often because we don't know what the courts are going to look like here in the not too far distant future, and which is a really difficult and sad state of affairs, which is part of the reason why I'm here tonight, because Ms. Kent said, the ACLU is very privileged to have great lawyers, and we've used the courts very effectively, and we hope to be able to use the courts effectively in the future, but we don't know. And so we're all going to have to be much more vigilant as individuals about things we care about, particularly at the local level. So what we're doing at the state level, I was telling some folks earlier, our national's gone from about 700,000 to over 1 million members since the election. In Virginia, we've gone from 7,900 members on the 1st of November to 16,800 members today, which is great, and we love that. And we also have 1,000 volunteers that we didn't have on election day. And we're now working on putting together a plan where we're going to come out and do listening tours and talk to people, but also empower people to act locally in ways that don't require our supervision, our control, or our direction. And this is what we're planning to do. And I'd be interested in answering any questions you have. But we're choosing to do some toolkits on how do you interact with local school divisions in order to make sure LGBTQ kids have protections after the federal government walks away from them. Right? How do you interact with your supervisor on police practices when the first thing the White House did today was take down civil rights and LGBTQ and climate change off their website and substitute, build up our military, and protect our law enforcement community for that. We have all kinds of legislation going on right now, which I could talk about, but a lot of it has to do with police practices, and Fairfax is trying to move forward. We've interacted with Fairfax on a number of issues. The supervisor knows that we didn't think they didn't quite get where we wanted them to be on civilian review, but that was because there were people pushing back really hard. And so we need to empower that process to go forward in a way that really is constructive. But we need people like you to be interacting on those issues. So we're going to do a toolkit on police practices and reform. We're going to do a toolkit on LGBTQ advocacy in the schools on behalf of kids and employees. And we have a series of other toolkits that we're putting together. We're going to go out and we're going to give everybody those toolkits, and then we're going to say to you, have at it, right?
Yeah.
You know, and people say to me, well, do you have like local chapters? And we do have a chapter in Northern Virginia, and you can interact with the chapter. But, and I've told my chapter this, and they get it. The reality is that if you focus on maintaining the organizational structure, you use energy that you could be using on getting this stuff done.
Yep.
And so what we want to do is empower you to do things where 5 of you want to get together in somebody's living room, and then you're going to show up and do some things like that. But we want to empower you to do things that would make a difference right there, right in your community where you are now, and important.